1930. In New York Harbor, an escorting Armada of Honor clusters about a battered, weather-beaten bark, home from an historic exploration of the Antarctic. Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd is in command, first man to conquer the North and South Poles.
Greetings to you, my young friends. I am glad for this chance to tell you something about the top of the world, and perhaps something about the bottom of the world, too. The North Polar Sea is surrounded by frozen continents. The Antarctic continent is surrounded by frozen seas. The bottom of the world, is considerably colder than the top of the world. The South is as cold as people think the North is. Why did we explore? Why did we go to the top of the world? As long as there remains anything unknown on the face of this earth we live on, man is going to go after it to try to find out what it is, to attempt to conquer it, and to learn how to live in it. Little did I think, when we flew to the North Pole in 1926, this area, the contiguous islands and waters to our flight to the pole, would become one of the most important strategic areas on the face of the earth.
Below is the actual North Pole, the top of the world. The plane returns after anxious hours to the expedition's base at Spitsbergen. In 16 hours, the flight had accomplished what Peary's heroic sled journey had taken more than a year to do. Admiral Byrd and pilot Floyd Bennett had blazed an aerial trail across the Arctic.
I myself think we have a good chance to avoid war. But if we, unfortunately, God forbid, do have a war, much of it will be fought across the top of the world, across the poles. It is very important that we get prepared to fight in the bitter cold and to utilize mechanized units there and to have bases near the pole, because it close and has strategic position with reference to our potential enemy. As the world continues to shrink with an ever-increasing acceleration, the northern areas will become important for human habitation. It is because the bottom of the world is an untouched reservoir of natural resources.
Southward ho! The start of one of Admiral Byrd's 6 expeditions to study the weird wonders of the amazing Antarctic. Ashore in Antarctica, the White Continent. Soon scouts are searching for the snow-smothered site of earlier camps. Proudly, Old Glory is run up to fly again over Little America. This is Little America, the southernmost city in the world. By air, man has explored vast chunks of the Antarctic 6 million square miles. Admiral Byrd returns from a scouting flight with only minutes to spare. A savage blizzard is about to strike. Whirling up from the pole, as all storms here do, it brings ice-edged snow lashed by fierce winds. In their shelter below, members of the expedition study photographs taken on Byrd's flight. Dog sleds carrying vital information collected on the expedition and their drivers abandon Little America and return to the ships now being loaded. Those longtime friends of the Byrd expeditions, the penguins, say goodbye. The natural resources of the Antarctic must be left behind: coal, oil, uranium, and penguins. Ahead, the long voyage home.
This is the Texas Tinfoil Podcast.
What's going on, guys? This is event 2. My name is Moog, and then my co-host, Ted.
So it's Texas.
We decided we were going to do this podcast based on Operation Highjump, Texas. I would rather you take it away. Get the viewers and the listeners attuned of what we're going to talk about today. That'd be pretty awesome. Kind of figure out, and I want to be the
All
rebuttal on
right.
this
Yeah, we
one.
did. All right, cool. Well, we decided to, after a little talk, there's so many options that are out there and so many things to talk about that are, we both feel are pretty interesting. So we decided to go with Operation Highjump this time. And Operation Highjump was supposed to be about, I kind of pre-titled this Settling the Score with Base 211. Base 211 was a supposed Nazi base that existed in Antarctica that was built there during the Second World War. And they worked on construction of this prior to that. So whether it actually existed or not, there's been tons of speculation and argument on both sides. But the official report, the official narrative is there is no proof of any actual National Socialist or Nazi bases, German Nazi bases. So Operation Highjump was officially titled the United States Navy Antarctic Developments Program. And now this happened in 1946. We all know this was after the Second World War, and it was supposed to take place from 46 to 47. Now, this is also called Task Force 68. Now, this is done by the United States Navy. It was to establish the Antarctic research base that they call Little America. Every time they've gone back, they've added a number to it. So this was like Little America 3 or 4. I think it was 4. And the operation was organized by Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, which was a gentleman that was speaking at the intro there. This guy has, we can get into him shortly, but if you want to talk about a guy who's seen a lot, a guy who has all of the awards, this is one of the guys. Anyways, he's retired. He was the officer in charge of Task Force 68, and that was also led by another Rear Admiral, Ethan Eric Larson. He was a commanding officer as well, Task Force 68. The officer in charge was Byrd, and then the commanding officer was Larson. So these two gentlemen were key in coordinating all this stuff. The credit does go to Admiral Byrd because he was able to get all this with his experience, was able to collaborate with everybody and get this stuff set up and put together pretty quickly. August 26th, 1946, that's when Operation Highjump commenced. It was supposed to last, I believe it was 5 months or 4 months, I believe. And it actually ended early in late February of 1947. So there's again, this is where the controversy comes in as to why, but we'll get into that. But this expedition that was sent out there by the Navy, we're not talking just 2 or 3, explorer ships or maybe a couple escort vessels. No, we're talking 4,700 plus men, 70 ships, and 33 aircraft. That was what was sent from the United States naval ports to Antarctica. So these guys showed up in force. This is a big display of power by the United States. Now there's a lot of back and forth as to why exactly. And I'm not going to pick sides. I'm just going to tell the story here. Operation Highjump's objectives were pretty simple. The United States Navy wanted to train personnel and test equipment in the coldest conditions. And in order to do that, they wanted to extend and consolidate the United States sovereignty over the largest practicable area of the Antarctic continent. Now, down the road, this was later publicly denied, but this is in the Navy's original paperwork. This was why they sent so many ships, and they sent a strong arm, right? They didn't just show up over there with a couple rowboats, right? They showed up with plenty of firepower. So again, publicly denied, but it is still in their documentations. Do enough reading. The other parts of that was not only to project power and to cut out a piece of Antarctica for ourselves, and to project power to the new forming world with the fall of the enemy powers, and with the United States, Great Britain, all of the allied countries now in power. There was now a vacuum, and of course, this was prior to what we call the Cold War. So things were still kind of like everything was still kind of up in the air. Only a year after the Second World War, and they wanted to determine the feasibility of establishing and maintaining, utilizing all of the words for the Antarctic bases. They were trying to make sure that they were going to get all the information that they could and all the applications they could while they were there. I mean, sending a lot of people with a lot of ships and a lot of resources there, it costs a lot to do that. So they wanted to get all that they could out of this mission here. So when they showed up, that was what they worked on. Now, they also wanted to make sure, because the South Pole is colder than the North Pole, if it worked there, it would work in the North. Now, this will not only help other establishments that America was working on at the time, mainly in Greenland, where the United States has used Greenland for kind of a lily pad launching points. And there are tons of aircraft that use Greenland and eventually kind of lily pad from there and into Europe. Now, Canada and all the other guys in the North that are allied with the United States, all of this information, of course, you can assume would be shared with all of them, or maybe shared at a cost, right? Because the U.S. doesn't do anything for free. So they wanted to make sure that this would work, because if it works there, it could work in other places. So the biggest fear that they had was the growing threat they perceived from the Russians. Again, there's a power vacuum. So now you have the Russians on one side and the United States on the other. So everybody knew, going all the way back to General Patton, that would be the case. That the Russians, even though they sacrificed a ton to make the Second World War end on that front, that they were still not going to be the warmest of friends with America once it was over. It was like the enemy of my enemy kind of thing.
Seeing how everybody was talking about, he was talking about the enemies of the North and everything like that, you would assume, okay, there's Russia or whatever. But he's not talking about, it's funny because he's not talking about Russia, but we automatically assume, because of World War II and everything that was going on, you would think that, it's going to be Russia that's going to come back and hit us, and we're got to be prepared for something like that. Maybe it's going to be nuclear. We don't know. At this point, we don't know. We just barely launched a bomb in Hiroshima at the time, so everybody knows that there's nukes out there, but who has them? They know, everybody knows now that we have the nukes, right? So what if another power, assuming they may have stolen research, or they themselves were actually researching nuclear war at the time that we were at the same time? Because remember, United States and Russia have this thing going back on who's going to be the best, who's going to run it first. There was the space launch there for that time for a minute, who was going to be the first ones to get to the moon.
That was in the late 50s, early 60s. Yeah.
Right. And then now we have nuclear war going on. We just bombed Hiroshima. That would I would assume ended World War II quick. Everybody's like, whoa. But now you got Byrd saying, hey, man, enemies of the North. You're like, oh, God, at this point, we got Russia now. Right. We done messed with all this stuff. And, Russia was our ally at the time during World War II. But, like all friendships, not all friendships are going to stay together at one time.
Right. It was the enemy of my enemy. Remember remember
the
at the
enemy of my
beginning.
enemy of my friend at the time.
Yeah.
Now it's my enemy of my enemy is now my enemy.
Yeah.
So that being said, me reading into this, when I first read it, I was thinking, what war are they talking about? What were they fighting? You know, there was a lot of expeditions going on, and some of those they actually fought, didn't they, Tex? Or is that me misreading some of the parts there?
Um, well, Admiral Byrd was involved in World War One. He was there for that.
Right, right,
Was
right.
in combat, and World War Two was also in combat against the Axis powers. The Axis powers. I we can go into to all the little details, but I think
Let's
what's
just
important
say
is that he's a
Admiral
veteran,
Byrd.
and by veteran I mean he
Let's just
like
say he's a
let me
badass. This guy is a
yeah
badass. Like he's
he
got a lot of medals under this. This man has a lot of medals under his belt. Like
he's got 8 rows.
so his diary. One thing that we should get into is that diary, man. It's got a lot
All
of
right.
things. I know it has a lot of things. Tex has actually read some of the stuff that goes into the diary. I would let
Mhm.
him explain it more because I get the diary, but I'm kind of like, it's kind of confusing if you don't know how to actually read it to where it needs to be read to understand what he's talking about. There's some things that I get lost in translation for me, you know. And I like
Mhm.
to read, but like with the war, like I said, like we were talking about the enemies of the North. He's talking about extraterrestrial. I call them extraterrestrial. I mean, there was many interpretations in this diary about what they are, who they are. Um, I know that what were they called? The aeronaut. I'd say era. Excuse me if I butcher this. The Arin. I can't even say it anymore. I was saying it just perfectly. Aeronaut. Aeronari. God, can you help me, Tex? I'm butchering this so bad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the Arianari is what one
Aeronari. Yeah, the
when you go
Aeronari.
through a book. Yeah, the the Arianari. I think it's
Shit.
that's what it was. I read the name, and it literally is not a name that I was like, okay, Anunnaki and all these other ancient
Yeah, there's
ancient
all kinds of
aliens.
weird stuff.
Yeah, I'm just saying like
Anunnaki, Aeronari.
the Arianari are basically um the all right. So to get into that and not make it take forever, basically the guy in charge with the little mustache, um, him and all of his cohorts they were in big search of banners and logos and symbolism, things that they could use as part of the
Even
propaganda here, things that they could use
even
to
the
unite.
occult
Well, the occult thing was that we can get into that later, but all of these like all the symbology or symbolism. All right,
symbolism,
yeah, the fucking
symbolisms.
the
We gotta get.
symbolism.
What was the guy's name again? The guy that said that from
Oh,
Boondocks.
the Boondock Saints. Yeah,
He's a
fucking
symbolism.
Agent Smecker. Anyway, anyway, like yeah, the symbolism. All right, so yes, like they were chasing all of this stuff down, and a lot of the things that they had read and heard over the many years was switched up or bastardized or just outright lied about to fit the narrative that all of these things are German centric and having to do with the superiority of the German peoples. The
Right.
Secret Diary. When you read the book, the diary was supposedly Admiral Byrd was known. He was known for keeping a logbook, a diary, to speak. And in this diary, he had tons of notes, and it was he would document everything he did, right? Whether it be stuff on the ship, personal issues, whatever the case, he always kept this stuff. Coordinates when they were moving somewhere and they were coming back from somewhere, dates and times, and it was a logbook, right? You know, it was stuff to
He's
keep
pretty
him
smart in case something happens and somebody finds it. They can know exactly what happened before the last page or something. You know?
quite possibly something like that, or maybe they're just cliff notes for him when he's doing reports and sending them in because he is upper class. This is not some guy that's just washing anchors, man. This is not a dude that's scrubbing the decks. This is a guy that's in charge. Right? The details of the story is this: while Admiral Byrd is there to survey the area. He's in a plane, you know, he's a pilot, he's flown, he's got other pilots, you know, co-pilots and stuff, people with him, and these guys are out taking photographs. They're mapping these glaciers. They found different mountain ridges, and they're documenting, photographing, and trying to measure all of these things and the distance of these places from their base, which is called Little America. And as this is happening, they continue as far south as they can. One of the missions that he flew was, this is in the secret diary because his regular diaries have all been turned in. The United States Navy has them all and has turned them in. And now that's considered their property, I guess. And he didn't get to keep any of these. The secret diary is the one that he kept for himself. Again, supposedly. And in the secret diary, as he was flying to reach the South Pole, there was less and less ice and snow when he got closer to the South Pole. And as he got closer, the ice was gone and it gave way to warmer temperatures. And there was grass, there was foliage, and there were some mammoth-looking things walking around the way you described it. And these guys were hanging out in a moderate temperature. Kind of weird to find at the South Pole, which is supposed to be the coldest part of the planet, but this is the story. And so he's like, oh my God, this is crazy. We got to fly closer to this. And we got to get some footage and you know, we got to get photographs. We got to document this. And as he's on his way to get closer to these things, he can no longer control his aircraft. He can't turn left or right. The harder he pulls on the stick, it won't move. And he starts to panic.
You know what this reminds me of? Something off of Galaga, bro. When the ship gets caught
So
into the laser
when they capture you and just take off,
that's what it reminds me of.
so they fucking. So I was going to say, so Admiral Byrd gets Gallagher, right? They take his ass, and apparently it's these two big ass flying saucers that show up on either side of his airplane and take control of his airplane, and he can't break free. They got this tractor beam, or I don't know what technology they're using. But if they got UFOs, that means they got the technology, all right? And there's a voice that comes on the radio. This voice comes on the radio and tells them, yeah, and then on these aircraft are swastikas. So he's like, fuck, he's probably shitting bricks at this point, right? I mean, who wouldn't? You know, you got
coming back.
Because think about it, the Nazis, like, purportedly they've worked on these wonder weapons, right? They've worked on wonder weapons, and that was like they would reach for the stars for everything that they did. And because of that, they did make big strides in certain things like the V rockets and all this stuff. So, I mean, a lot of the things that they pushed for, not all of it came to fruition, but the few things that did were pretty impressive. So, got to give the devil his due. And the guy, Admiral Byrd, is like, well, all right, this is not cool. And, yeah, we can't get away. Voice comes on his radio, and it's hard for him to get any signals in or out because he tries to radio for a mayday, like, hey man, you know, just get the signal out, bro. There's something's not right. Can't do that, but he does receive a message, and it's in a thick Germanic type accent that tells him that they have control of his craft. Yeah, that they have control of his craft. That not to worry, that he will be treated. He'll be treated well, and he will remain safe. And they're going to land him in about 7 to 10 minutes, and then they have a place they need to take him once they land. And so he's kind of stuck like Chuck. They land him, they get him out. These guys that he's talking to are tall, Arianic, Aranani, whatever
Ariani, the
the
Ariani.
Arianis, yeah, whatever these guys,
Let me see if I can.
these are the
I can actually tell you.
these are the true Aryan race space people.
So the
Okay, so
Ariani are described as they had a Nordic or German accent. They did they did speak English, our language. They were tall with blonde hair.
mhm.
And
the example
yeah,
that Hitler
and
gave,
they
right?
had, let's see. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly
Oh,
what it was.
okay,
Now the
so
blue
these
eyes, it
guys,
doesn't specify that they did have blue eyes, but
I
they
mean,
did say
I
that they
mean,
were tall with
when
blonde
you have
hair.
9 out of the 10 fucking traits, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that
Yeah,
there's
you
blue
want to
eyes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is just fucking finish
the true
bro,
the true Aryan
bro.
race never.
You're gonna sell me the truck. Just put the window tint on it, man. You know what I mean? Just fucking finish it, right? So like, just fucking go all the way. All right, and
Could you imagine?
whatever. So these
Uh,
fucking guys walk him in, and they have to.
nice.
He has to talk to somebody that's in control of this society that they live in, which is on the other side of the ice that no one else has ever been to except for the Nazis, apparently. And that's why they couldn't find any Nazi bases because they didn't need a base. They just went into this place. And they go and talk to this guy that they just refer to as the master. Okay. He's like,
Maybe
think of
translation.
it as like their president. He's a benevolent dictator kind of guy, right? Because there's plenty of those that are nice. And he's like, hey, this is what's going on in the world. We've been watching you guys for a long time, and we generally want what's best for the planet. Like your typical, we're aliens, and we just want to make sure the planet Earth is fine. We don't care about you. We just care about the Earth. And now that you guys have unlocked nuclear technology and you've harnessed these for bombs, nuclear fission bombs, this is a huge concern for us because you guys are going to start doing. You're essentially monkeys throwing nuclear warheads, and then that worries us because you're going to hurt the planet. And because you're such a high-ranking guy, and because you're so badass, and I see all the little medals you have, I need you to go and tell your boss, right, the president and everybody above you, what I'm telling you. You need to go disclose this information to them. You're the best chance we have at getting our perspective and idea to your people. All right. So we're gonna let you go. Don't worry, we treated you nice this whole time. We're gonna let you go, and you can fly on back. We're gonna fucking. They rescued you from the Galaga spaceship. You're on your way back, and the two Nazi UFOs fly his ass back up into the air. They
That's
part
funny.
ways. They tell him in German, "We'll see you later," and they fly off. And then Admiral Byrd and his buddies that are with him just head on back to base to tell the story. Now, supposedly, while this was going on, um, there was a loss of time that Admiral Byrd and his logbook,
Excuse me.
the real logbook, there was a loss of time, and also in the other logbook, this one that supposedly is a hidden one, his hidden diary or secret diary, uh, have all of these details and have a time frame that was missing, and those 3 or 4 hours that are missing is what happened during those 3 or 4 hours in the secret diary. So that sounds really great. I mean, that they start to match up. He comes back. Everybody's like, "Hey, what happened?" He tells the story to the other higher ups, and they're like, "Whoa, this is not something we ever expected to happen. We're supposed to be taking photos of mountains and shit. Like, yeah, this is something we need to radio into the higher ups." They get a hold of all the people they need to, and the expedition is cut short. All right, guys, pack it in. Abandon this shit right fucking now. Come on back home. And that's what everybody does. But during this,
Which is weird because you would
well,
think this is a brand new expedition for one. Two, all the resources that are put into this expedition. Well, just by looking at it, if you really think about it, it doesn't even make sense as at all. You got 4,700 people, a bunch of aircrafts, a bunch of warships for what? An expedition? when I think of an expedition, I'm thinking like 3 or 4 ships with a couple of helicopters, and a research team to go out there and see what the hell's going on. I'm not
Some
thinking 40,
scientists.
I'm not thinking 4,700 people, some
I mean, like
40 ships and like 13 helicopters to come and see what the hell's going on. Like, dang, the hell,
guys, you don't understand. We're gonna do a little survey, and we're gonna do a survey in the middle of Africa. We're gonna send General Patton and 20,000 men, and like no, that is for war, right? That is for a reason.
You get it.
The Navy is the same way, same thing. So
what is
while this is going on, now the Navy suffered some deaths during this time. They chalk them all up to accidents and say, well, this was during the moving of cargo and equipment on and off the ships and doing this and that basic maintenance, people died. Well, the untold story in this diary is what he had heard from the people that were all around Little America and still in the boats off the coast, off the icy coast, right next to the glaciers. There was apparently some lights in the sky, and there was during this gap of time where he was gone, some of these aircraft were just kind of checking out the boats and seeing what's going on. And if you guys are not familiar with anything that America has ever said, here's a little clue. Leave the boats alone. If you fuck with the Navy, they will fuck with you back. Leave them alone, right? And that's one thing that they don't mess around with. So, I mean, look at recent times, right? I don't want to get political, but just look at recent times. Do some dumb shit. You fuck around, you're going to find out. And back then was no different. They just got out of war. These guys are still geared up for that. And so these aircraft that are moving at unbelievable speeds, doing these aerial acrobatics.
We'll just say
they're doing
of the aircrafts or whatever, we can call them off. They're called off Wonderson, is what they're calling them, the aircrafts.
What does that mean?
It's connecting the aircraft with the technology of the Nazis, but they call it off Wonderwaffe. It's basically the ship, is from what I was reading. The disc encounter a disc-shaped aircraft called. Oh, I'm sorry, not off Wonder. I'm sorry, it's Flugerad. I'm butchering this, so forgive me. It's Flugerad. Flugerad.
I mean, I'm not at all. I don't know how much German is in the blood, but I'm pretty sure it's not a lot. So I'm not gonna even attempt. I'm not gonna attempt to pronounce that, but we're gonna go ahead and just. Yeah, I was gonna say we're
Flugerad with swastikas. Is what it says. I'm like, Dan, can you imagine a disc shape with swastikas spinning? It's like Mars Attack all over again.
Well, I was gonna say, man, like I'm gonna leave that to you because that's your pronunciation, and I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do like the American education system and say, good enough, and then rubber stamp that bitch and move it forward. So anyway, without me further butchering this thing here, these craft were getting a little too close. And so the Navy was like, hey, man, back up, right? And how do you tell someone to back up? I don't know, fucking shoot at them. So that's what they started doing. Saucers defended themselves, right? That's the story. And they fired back, and we lost some guys. And the Navy, being the Navy, is not going to come right out and say, oh, yeah, we battled with a bunch of flying saucers and shit and did a bunch of other things you're not supposed to know about. No, they're not going to tell anybody that. This is right after a global war. Everybody's just looking for peace. It's not like today's day and age where we go from war to war to war, right?
Could you imagine the outcry for that? If somebody was to say, hey, look, I just shot the aircraft, and then they reported in the news, could you imagine the mass panic that would erupt because after the war and stuff?
We can actually do that.
No, we can.
No. I mean, that was
aliens.
After the War of the Worlds, when the War of the Worlds was aired, you do remember the amount of people that lost their shit. They committed suicide, killed each other. Oh. There was pandemonium whenever they played this. Remember, back then there were very few TVs, if any. It was all radio. So whenever most people came home from work, they would turn on the radio and they would listen to, story time and stuff like that. And The War of the Worlds by Orson Welles was put on there. There was no huge disclaimer. There was no build up to it. They just kind of went with it. And a lot of people that heard this thought it was real and they lost their shit. That's a real thing. And
Yeah,
we can go more in depth on that. But anyway, just to stay on topic here, we'll get back out of the rabbit hole and we'll just continue on the path here. We're not chasing that one. So
No.
the diary states that some of these people that died was because of that. And when everybody got back to the United States after this was all hastily packed away back onto the boats, everyone made it back. Well, first they hit port in South America. They hit port in Chile so they could refuel, restock, do all the things they needed to do, and then head on up to the United States where they need to be debriefed and they need to hand over any and all information and evidence and everything to the United States government, right? While they stopped there in Chile, they start talking to some of these guys who were there. Chile in South America, Chile is in South America, if you're not familiar. It's pretty close to this other country called Argentina, which may be full of other people that have blonde hair, blue eyes, and they speak German for some reason or another. I don't know why they would be there. But these guys here who are Nazi sympathizers, they're also reporters. They put a big slant on this story. Some of the sailors did what they weren't supposed to, which is you talk about what you saw. And some of these guys mentioned like some of the stuff that they did. Somehow, one way or another, this story leaked.
By the way, the newspaper is called El Morcirio.
Yeah, copies of the articles by what's the name of this?
El Morcirio.
All right. So these guys here.
Morcuro.
Oh, it's supposed to be like the Mercury, right?
Yeah, I'll type it in. Can we type that
in
real quick? Let me see.
Mercario, I think is how they call it. But anyway, so these guys, I read this anyway a long while back. So they put out this story, and the story further adds to the legend of what happened when we were in Antarctica. We, as United States, were in Antarctica, and all of the weird things that happened there, including UFOs, that were linked to the Nazis, because these guys were Nazi sympathizers, and they wrote a story that slanted toward favoring the Nazis. And that spread like not about as fast as anything else in
probably like wildfire,
South America.
Right?
As fast as anything else in South America. And so by the time the fleet gets back to the U.S. and they dock and do all the things they need to do, they go and are debriefed for hours and hours. And all the higher-ups and everybody they can get their hands on are told, gag order, shut the fuck up. Nobody say anything. Whatever you saw, whatever you experienced, this stays here. No one speak on this ever again. If you do, you will face the worst charges that the military can throw at you. So, where I was saying here to kind of get back on track, everybody shuts up. But what some people, here's a little bit of trivia some of you guys may not be aware of. Admiral Byrd had children. He wasn't just by himself. He had a pretty decent-sized family. He had a bunch of sons and some daughters and stuff. So when you read through this stuff, and if you're doing any research on your own, which I highly encourage, you'll come across Admiral Byrd Jr. or Admiral Byrd III. And you're like, Admiral Byrd Jr., he was in these expeditions. But Admiral Byrd III, who's not an admiral, he was a seaman. Haha, we got all the jokes aside. But he was a naval. I believe he I don't think he ever became an officer, but anyway, his son was also on that same expedition where all of these things transpired. All these things happened, and he was there. So his father, Admiral Byrd, the main source of this, the guy who wrote this diary, and all this stuff happened to, he remained silent. He would just give a few cryptic little things in interviews here and there. He'd make a few off off the cuff kind of comments here and there, depending how you read into it. But
Right.
he would do that, and his son said, fuck it, I'm going to come out and tell everybody everything. This again ties into the diary, because his son found this diary after his father passed away, handed the diary out to some people, and some people were like, hey, this is awesome. We'd like to publish this, and we feel that the world needs to know about it. And he's like, I agree. I was there. And so they're like, cool, let's publish this. And then they do. And, well, the rest is history. Everybody's talking about it all the time.
You could buy the book too, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, it's just the printed version. But I know it's there.
Yeah.
I was looking at it through Amazon and stuff like that, and I think you can find it on those. So it's pretty interesting. I'm thinking about actually picking up a copy just to look at it.
This is it right here.
I just want to read what it has in there. I bet you it's something interesting or something.
All right, you guys do what you want to do, but I'm going to tell you this. There are 3 different names for this book, and the Phantom of the Poles is one of them. There's 2 other ones, but essentially they're the same book. So don't waste the money like I did. Keep your money and just buy one of them. The forward was written by somebody you might think is a little bit interesting. And some of the stuff that's in here, again, has a little bit of other stuff that's, I feel like, it's come from somewhere else, but we can get into that down the road.
Well, should I ask you to get one? Let me borrow it, Tex, if you have the book.
I have it on downloaded.
Okay.
I downloaded it off of, I don't know if I can transfer it to you or not.
Oh yeah, if you could email it, that'd be awesome, so I can kind of read up on it, see what it does. It's a big story, but to be honest, like, I thumbed through a lot of it because it kind of lost me on some parts. I was just kind of like, I kind of started skimming. Like, to be honest. So I was like, all right. Because, like, when I was reading about this story, there was a lot of things I was trying to understand. So remember, when you read the story, it's going to kind of like throw you off for a loop. So there's a lot of back and forth on everything. So just make sure when you do
it depends. It depends on how much you feed into the story. Like, again, I try to be a healthy skeptic. I try to just look at things and be like, all right, this is a little embellished.
Logical.
So it's like a little too much here, whatever. All right, so
I try to read from the logical stuff, like, okay, does this make sense or does it not make sense?
Right. So here's one thing though, because if this book right here could be a fake, could be a fraud, which is what most people believe. Yeah, they believe that this thing is a fraud. And the reason that they're saying it's a fraud is because how would he have kept his diary without anybody finding it? And why would it be for his son to find, who was also on the same expedition, but there was no direction as to what to do with it. But his son, by talking to his father, who apparently to everyone around, said he just completely kept his mouth shut about it. Apparently him and his son had some kind of private discussions, and they had come to the conclusion that it needed to be released. After going through all of this story, it's kind of weird. Admiral Byrd is a guy who has an ability to keep secrets. And why do I say that? Well, Admiral Byrd was not just a military man. He had a great streak for having what's the word I'm looking for here? Having honor, right? Because that's a word people probably don't use as much anymore. But he had integrity. Yeah, he had integrity.
He had a code.
He was
for sure.
He was the kind of guy that said, if I'm not going to say anything, he's not going to say anything, right? You would think. Well, so I went ahead and I was like, there's got to be other stuff going on with this guy. So I started really digging into his past and his life and stuff. There's another thing that made me believe that this man could keep secrets. And it says right here. I went into the Wikipedia list of Freemasons. And this is not exactly a complete list. And they tell you that it's not a complete list. But they did have a lot of names in their registry. And one of the names in the registry, who's that say right there? Richard E. Byrd, U.S. Admiral, installed in Federal Lodge Number 1, and founded the first Antarctic Lodge number 777 in 1935. Guys, do some digging. The Freemasons deserve their own little podcast. So I'm just going to say, this is one of those things. It's a little note. You just hold it up and put it in the back of your head there.
Yep, there you go.
Just hang on to that for later. May come in handy. All right, guys. Yeah. Now his son who said, "Hey, guys, I don't believe that this whole story is, should be kept to us. I believe we should come right out and talk about it and share it to the world." Yeah, he passed away. Well, he did become a naval officer, and he was 68 when he passed away. So again, he wasn't young, wasn't spring chicken, but 60s is kind of like the average pass away time, I guess. But it's the circumstances in which he died that it's really fucking weird, because they found him in an empty warehouse. Now, apparently, the security guard in the area found this guy, right, Byrd's son, found him in this warehouse with another man and a bottle of alcohol. Strange. And then here's the right here. Here's the article, October 9th, 1988, by Peter Kerr in the New York Times. Here's a copy of the page, and you'll find it on the top left quadrant right here. You can go online and pull it up and read it for yourself. Right. So the body of Admiral Byrd's son, 68, found in an empty warehouse. Richard E. Byrd Jr., which is the third. Again, it's going to sound a little confusing, but this is the son who lived his life in the shadow of his father, the Admiral, right? So Jr. only became a naval officer, and then his father was the Rear Admiral. So an Arctic explorer was found dead last week in the darkness of an abandoned warehouse in Baltimore. His emaciated body. This is what it says. His emaciated body, clad in dirt-blackened clothes and one scuffed shoe, the police there said yesterday. Harvard University, who a young naval officer escorted his father on a journey to Antarctica in 1947, apparently died of malnutrition and dehydration, the police said. This is what they said. All right. This is what they're saying after they gave this very weird sounding first paragraph. Was found in the first paragraph is this: was found dead last week in the darkness of an abandoned warehouse in Baltimore. His emaciated body. That means that this guy is no food, no water, right? This guy is emaciated. Kind of weird to do when you have I would assume, a pretty good amount of money, and you're in the area that your family lives in. How would you be emaciated? I know he's not in the military at this point.
For a long time and be starved to death or something, and then probably beat up or whatever.
No, apparently died of malnutrition and dehydration, the police said. Emaciated is a pretty good word. So
I think
the body was discovered Monday. I'm sure there is. That's why I'm reading this. The body was discovered Monday by a custodian who said he had chased Mr. Byrd and another man from the area on September 28th, according to Detective Charles Gilbert of the Baltimore Police Homicide Squad. Well, a lot of weird shit happens in Baltimore. It was unclear. It was, quote, unclear, unquote, the police said, quote, how the elderly member of a prominent Massachusetts family had come to wander and sleep in an area of warehouses and factories in the city's Hampden section, unquote. the city's
The what
Hampden
section?
section. Hampden, Hampden, city's Hampden section. Quote,
Interesting.
he was just wearing a shirt and pants and one shoe. And they all looked dirty, unquote, Detective Gilbert said, adding that the custodian who had chased Mr. Byrd and the other man recalled that, quote, they had booze with them in a paper bag at the time, unquote. His son was quoted in the Baltimore Sun yesterday as saying that Mr. Byrd left Boston on September 13th to attend a ceremony at the Washington headquarters of the National Geographic Society. Okay, National Geographic Society. The ceremony honored his father, Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the pioneer, aviator, and polar explorer who achieved fame with his long-distance flights over the Antarctic and expeditions in Antarctica from 1924 to 1956. This was supposedly when he was going to break the news that there were some things not told to the public. And then he was found in a warehouse. So how you go from being in an affluent neighborhood in Boston to a scummy warehouse with only one shoe on in Baltimore? Not entirely sure, but that's what happened to the man. So you guys can continue to read the rest of the article. Just talks about his father, the admiral, and how he lived in a shadow and how he looked up to him and he was his hero and all these other things. So you guys can figure the rest out on your own. I'll leave that there for you to decide for yourself if any of those things sound like foul play to you.
Supposedly the theory on the hollow earth spectacle.
This is what we're missing here. The hollow earth. Because in this diary, that's the way they describe it. How do you go so far south that there's no longer ice? It's kind of weird. That would mean
Not
that
only
you
that, but when the UFOs dropped the plane down into hollow earth land, where the master or architect came into play, he claimed to have seen a city made of crystal. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Basically, this is basically like the journey to the earth kind of theory. You know
journey
what I
to
mean?
journey to the center of the earth. Yeah, the
Yeah.
journey to the center of the earth took a lot of not a lot, but they did take some inspiration from certain people who were big advocates of hollow earth and the like. They were big advocates of these theories, and the theories go all the way back. I mean, I can show you. This hollow earth theory sounds a little insane, right? But do not, and I'm gonna say this as nice as I can. Do not think that this sounds so crazy that nobody else will pay attention to it, because this thing made it onto
Actual
this.
theories.
It made it onto this super great show that is 100% based in fact with logic and has tons of support for it. It's called Ancient Aliens. And
Historically, underground realms were not relegated to mere mythology. Well-respected scientists and mathematicians have long speculated about a theory that became known as Hollow Earth.
The scientist Edmund Halley is most famous for Halley's Comet. He was also very interested in the Earth, and one of the challenges was trying to figure out what was the...
now this is Michael Dennin speaking here, who's technically a PhD. He's a professor of physics and astronomy.
real structure of the inside of the Earth. He had a fascinating theory of not just a hollow Earth, but an Earth with multiple layers.
75 years later, 18th century mathematician Leonhard Euler put forth his own hollow Earth theory with no concentric shells and a sun at the center spanning 600 miles.
Euler was a gifted mathematician. He developed.
Now, some of these people, the reason I'm naming them is for when this makes it a podcast and people are just listening, they'll know who's actually speaking. And it's not us, nobody we have directly on panel with us. This is from the video.
No.
Yeah. And this guy right here looks like the kind of guy that would drop a fucking fart in an elevator and then look at you like this to see if you're going to say anything. Just look at you like this, bro, because he's about to get off on the floor and just look at you to see if you're going to say anything.
He's this idea that the planet Earth is not only hollow, but the poles are actually thinned. And there are actually entrances into the inner core at the north and south poles of the Earth. He imagined that there were advanced civilizations living inside the planet.
Ideas of an occupied hollow Earth would be revisited nearly 2 centuries later, in 1947, when famous polar explorer Admiral Richard Byrd flew reconnaissance missions over the North Pole.
Now, the other reason I keep pausing this is because if we play this entire thing through with no commentary, YouTube, their ass gets a little chapped, right? Because this is color. Yeah, this is color, right? That these guys are putting onto this story.
Byrd allegedly reported in his private journal about a mysterious land beyond the North Pole, which he called the center of the great unknown.
Admiral Richard Byrd was able to fly to the North Pole and back and recorded flying over lush green areas where none should have been.
Now, you notice right here, here's the first rebuttal to the reason I waited for this moment is they said this themselves right here. How is it during this secret, top secret diary that Admiral Byrd, who is known for taking very well and meticulous notes, why did he say this happened in the North Pole? Because in 1947, did he not go to Antarctica?
Yeah, right.
So if he was in Antarctica, why is this taking place in the North Pole? That is the first and immediate glaring problem in this story. And so many people repeat this. Yeah, so many people repeat this without really paying attention to it. A lot of other people who will bring this up and then start defending it. I'm like, you just stepped right over something right now. The whole beginning of this talked about going to Antarctica, not the North Pole. So why is he in the North Pole instead of Antarctica? So I'm not sure where they got the 3 years thing from. Again, this could just be misunderstandings, misspeaking, or just, again, glaring contradictions. You decide for yourself.
Got to Antarctica, that one of the first things they just...
And this is Mike Barra, who's an author of Ancient Aliens on Mars. Super credible. This is his explanation right here.
Discovered was an entrance into a hollow Earth civilization that was populated by very, very advanced beings.
Admiral Byrd made a lot of unusual statements, including talking about what he called a new kind of craft that could fly from pole to pole. And when Byrd got back to the United States, he was brought back to Washington, where he was questioned very heavily about his statements. And allegedly he was told to stop talking about this.
Is it possible that entrances to another world can be found at the Earth's poles? And if so, did Admiral Byrd actually pass through one of them? According to some ancient astronaut theorists, such gateways do exist.
The book, Mogley. Let's start with the book. Because all this whole issue, the whole controversy, the story, all spawns from the secret diary. Let's start from there.
Okay. So him saying that basically being abducted by aliens. Let's just get that out there. His aircraft got control, was taken down there. Me personally, I think maybe this is just me speaking I'm just theorizing per se. What if he was actually going through and maybe he did see those UFOs, let's per se, but everybody says UFOs are secret military aircrafts, you know what I mean? What if
this is in the 40s, Mowgli? So we got to look at it through the lens of what happened in the 40s.
So me personally, I don't believe in the Earth being hollow. I'm just gonna get that out there. I'm not gonna argue with anybody. To each their own. This is just what I believe. You know what I mean? I I don't believe in flat Earth. I don't believe in hollow Earth. There's a lot of people that can say factual things or whatever they want to say. I don't believe in it. Let's just get that out the way. Because I'm pretty sure somebody's gonna actually bring up flat Earth and hollow Earth. Me personally, I think he may have found something, but I don't think there may have been like maybe people per se. Maybe they are humans like us, but I think they're just probably actual people that live underground and they probably built something there. That's what I'm. This is my theory. I don't think it was an alien. I just think it was probably people who know the area, brought them there, told them some
So
bizarre
these guys
stuff.
that these guys that live in Antarctica, and
What if there is? I'm
I
not.
can't
I'm
believe I'm
not
taking the
saying.
position.
I'm
But
just saying. What if there's just people that live there? We don't know that they're there. They just they probably hid from society, just like those weird tribes that don't even know that human technology exists. You know what I mean?
right, and these are the same
I'm just
guys
saying.
that are flying UFOs with German accents and swastikas on the side,
Right.
coincidentally landing
I just
American
think
aircraft.
I just think that maybe they're
I mean,
lost German
that doesn't sound.
soldiers like Nazis. What if they are just Nazis? Legitimate Nazis.
But
They
the
just
but now they've got UFOs. They got wonder weapons because I would think that UFOs would turn the tide of the war. Would they not? Even if they don't mass produce them, one or two is more than enough to get. Look at the UFO scare in. I mean, in all of the history books, you don't see anything about UFOs, but
I'm very
there are
skeptical about this
there are
story.
tons of white papers. There are tons of white papers now, man,
Or
that
but what
are
if
released,
or
right?
what if or what if he actually was flying and he started hallucinating, the G force and all that stuff can make you hallucinate.
Lack of
What if
oxygen, too
yeah,
cold. Instruments
something.
get a little weird because you're going around the poles.
And then you're thinking to yourself, "Oh my god, there's this," and then you imagine there's actually UFOs and they dragged me there and you got lost. Maybe after 3 hours of him hallucinating, maybe he hallucinated for 3 hours, and what if he finally just snapped back into place and be like, "What the hell just happened?" All the stuff it was just one big hallucination. That's what I'm thinking. Like, what if it's a hallucination and he
Possible.
nothing really did really happen. He just assumed he saw something with him flying so much. I mean, 3 hours of flying, you kind of admit that's kind of a little steep if you haven't. I mean, knowing you've done it all your life, there will be times when you get a little bit of like tired or something. What if he was tired and he decided he wanted to fly still anyways to do his little patrol thing, and that's what happened. He hallucinated.
Well, I mean that sounds cool, except most of the stuff that I read that I didn't list here. But you guys can just search it for yourself if you don't believe me, which I hope no one believes either one of us, and you just check it out for yourself.
Right.
He
Like
they
I
had
said, this
left
is just
they had left in the middle of what would be considered the day because the sun was up because they were surveying, they were taking photographs and measurements and things like that with that tool that was shown a second ago on that video clip. That's what he was doing. So he wasn't sleepy, he wasn't tired, he wasn't any of that. And even let's say even if he did hallucinate or lose all of his faculties and everybody else in the plane did as well, he didn't have enough fuel to fly for 3 hours and then come back.
so what if it was maybe it was just like right then and there. It was probably close to the base, maybe not that far.
Well,
If
I
it,
don't know if you know anything about Antarctica or not, but there's a lot of shit there called
I,
snow and
I
ice
don't know
and
other than that and
like
icebergs and
when you go to
probably
land
like
in
super
snow.
penguins and stuff and belugas
I mean,
and
when you go to land in
nautilos.
snow, well, I'm saying you go to land in snow. That was part of the reason they were there was to research all this stuff to see if it's possible to build, maintain, like that's listed in their objectives, to build and maintain airstrips and runways and bases in these Arctic temperatures that are worthwhile. And they, as far as I know, they had one runway that they maintained as best they could, but still had lots of issues with. You can go read all of the issues and plane mishaps that happened on the runway right outside of Little America number 4. Sorry. And that was with it being maintained. It was hard for some planes to land or take off and would cause damage to the ice or sleet or snow or whatever it was that you would call it. So if they were to land, it'd have to be one hell of a landing, and land in a place where they would not damage anything. Right. Sit there in the Antarctic for 3 hours without freezing to death. Not sure how they're going to do that. And then turn around and fly back. Don't know how they're going to take off from there either. So again, that nothing accounts for the 3 missing hours. I'm just going to say, I don't know. I don't have a. I do not have a theory. I'm just saying that.
What if
no matter how I've tried rebuttaling this, like, but I've tried just arguing against it. But
so how about the North and the South? They have a magnetic field. Remember, can that help you? Mm-hmm. Can that hallucinate you? Which that'll throw off. We would call it what we would call the fear cage at one point in time.
It'll throw off your instruments. Right. If you are going off of a magnet, there is magnetic north, and then there's true north, right? And there's magnetic south and true south. But
in theory, a fear cage can actually make you hallucinate. So if there was a magnetic field strong enough to do that, it can actually make you hallucinate.
But his hallucination matches 3 hours. I mean, you're giving a rebuttal to the story, and that's fine. I'm just trying to. I'm not saying that
find a logical. I'm just saying I'm trying to find a logical reason other than a UFO spacecraft's fucking kidnapped me, put me into Hollow Earth, and I found a society in there of super beings that are like really
the whole point,
basically the Aryan race.
Right. Well, the whole point of me saying that is not because I believe it happened. It's just I'm just stating the fact that he did not have enough fuel, and the 3 hours he was missing, the base did not have contact with him. They could not reach him, and he did not have enough fuel to fly for that long and make it back. So there is something that happened, and that
I'm pretty sure there's something
with whatever theory you have, or I have, or the people listening at home have.
But I'm pretty sure there is a theory behind it. But
what do you guys think? Now, the first rebuttal to the diary that I have is that I believe that it's not real. I believe that it's fake. I don't believe that Admiral Byrd would make another diary after being specifically told not to do something by the U.S. government.
He did
because a lot of, I'm saying it this way, because a lot of men with honor and integrity, when they're asked by their superior officers not to do something, again, I can't speak for the men because he's passed, rest his soul, but I would, from everything that I've read from the guy, he seems to still be that honorable guy, that honorable man that has integrity and says, look, if I promise not to say anything, I'm not going to say anything, right? He's a man of his word. So I believe that was that book may have been written by somebody, but I don't believe it's him. There are a lot of exact times that were published for his logbooks in the secret diary that match some of his other diary entries that are public, and other entries that don't go with the Antarctic stuff, but other flight logs from other people that are not in the same place. It's like they kind of cherry picked certain things and put it in the book. Right. And the main thing that I have is there's a movie. I've got a script right here. It's to a movie called Lost Horizon. All right, this movie came out before 1947. actually came out 10 years before that. And it had to do with these people. I'm not going to say it's outright plagiarized. I'm going to say that it's taken very heavy inspiration from this 1937 movie called The Lost Horizon. And excuse me, I gotta get me. Oh man, that reminds me, I gotta get me a beer because I'm not not had a beer on stream yet. Beer of the stream today is Keystone Light. Because I'm getting a little dry here.
That's it. I believe he made a. I believe he has a personal diary. I don't think I would fault him for having a personal diary to write his thoughts down. Just his personal thoughts. Me personally, you know, I'm gonna be out in Antarctica for like God knows how long. I need to feel some sort of humanity in myself. So why not do a personal diary of what I do on a daily basis? You know. Hey, maybe
Right.
you never know. Antarctica, believe it or not, is a dangerous place. You know, you can die from, you know, the cold or, you know, hypothermia or something. Maybe it was just a way of him having something in case he was to pass from something weird like that, like hypothermia or being cold. At least he had his personal feelings of what was going on during that time, and maybe if he was to die, if somebody and he had him finish work that somebody was trying to finish, he had most of the stuff that he was doing during that time written down. That way maybe somebody else can maybe pick it up, you know. That'd be something I would understand from a military point or a scientist point of view, you know. Have my research in a personal diary just in case something was to happen, somebody else can pick up where I left off and go from there. Me
Right.
personally,
Well,
that's what I think.
and I'm not gonna shit on the theory. I mean, I have no skin in the game either way, and that sounds like something people may do, something he might do too. I mean, I can't speak for the man again, but to finish my thought, only difference is this is Shangri-La is the name of this place, and the guy that's going to talk to you is the High Lama, right? Okay, so to me, it's a 1-for-1, and I'm sticking with that. So to me, it's already been debunked in my mind because right out the gate it says it takes place on the North Pole. It did not. It took place on the South Pole. Well, they said it took place on the North Pole first, where all of this stuff was seen, and then 3 years later he was in the South Pole. Nowhere in there's a 3-year gap. Nowhere in there does this take place that I'm aware of. I listed several expeditions that Byrd was on, and I gave time frames on them. So right out the gate says it happens in the North Pole, but this supposedly happens during the Antarctic expedition. So those two things don't match up. As for the Nazi base, there have been 0 reports of Nazi bases or equipment or paraphernalia or artifacts or anything you want to, whatever you want to call it. They're propaganda. There's no evidence of that there. Supposedly, according to the main story told by people in charge here, there's no signs of digging or tunneling or anything in the ice. And we both know that the Nazis did have a base in the North Arctic Circle. And whenever you fly over there, even now, and land in those spots, you can take tours and go out that way. They sprinkled millions of fucking little metal swastikas all in the snow because in the old days, if we just throw a bunch of our shit on it, it's ours now. That's not how that works, but the Nazis did that. They just sprinkled their shit everywhere. Like they loved all of their propaganda. They loved all of their little, again, symbols, right? They loved all their shit. So I think that when people hear about the bases, they hear about the bases in the North Arctic and confuse it with the Antarctic. Again, that's just my theory. That's what I think. It's quite possible it's just a mix-up. And that's why it keeps popping up from time to time. Or the Nazis burrowed all the way in there and met some aliens, and now they live there. I mean, who knows? One of those two, right? I don't feel like I'm choking up for this. So it could be a possible confusion between North and South Pole. I mean, why not? The diary itself confuses the North and South Pole. So whatever.
I mean, heck, everybody confused him that he was in Antarctica when he was really in North Pole.
North Pole. Right. So I'm gonna say this. This also ties into the Hollow Earth. But I guess all of this stuff is wrapped up in this one little story. It's just really weird, don't you think?
Right.
And the Hollow Earth thing, Mogley, you said you don't believe the Hollow Earth, you don't believe in flat Earth, you don't believe in any of that.
No.
What other rebuttal do you really have? Do you have anything on that ties that to the book?
No,
Or do you believe
that? I just kind of figured, like, I don't believe in the aliens part, but I do believe maybe from the magnetic field he may have hallucinated all this. Hell, who knows? Maybe he did land the plane and kind of like hallucinated there for like 3 hours and then got back in the plane and actually got back up. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can gather, but I mean, that's my theory. Everybody has their opinion. Maybe somebody else says, "Hey, that's not what I think. This is what I think." Just let me know, man. I would like to know what your thoughts are. My thought is he hallucinated. He landed the plane, hallucinated some more, made up all these beings, and said that he did travel to Hollow Earth. But what if he went so far south that there was actually, grassy area? Maybe not all of it was. Maybe it was just like a little melted part of the Antarctic. Hey, it could happen. I'm just saying.
Well, none of us can explore Antarctica right now because all of the countries on the planet apparently have signed this treaty saying nobody can go to Antarctica, and if you do go, you can only go to certain parts. And they give you a little tour. Hey, here's some snow and some ice. Look at the penguins. Cool. Let's leave. That's what's supposed to happen. So maybe they did find something over there. I don't know.
Or maybe they have their own military secret base.
Now, I'm not, because we're only covering Operation Highjump and we're not talking about anything that is currently being discussed. We will, only for that reason, we'll cut it there. And I'm not going to get into energy weapons or anything else. I'm just going to leave it at that. But discussing Hollow Earth, I'll give my little idea. This book came out in 1964. The Hollow Earth book was released by this guy named Walter Siegmeister, right? Walter Siegmeister is not a name everybody knows. And if you do some digging, you'll find this guy. Siegmeister sounds, doesn't sound like a good name to have on the bottom of a book. But a name that does sound good, Raymond Bernard. Now, Raymond Bernard is a writer. The same guy, Walter Siegmeister, is also Raymond Bernard. That's his writer name, right? They call him pen names. So this guy uses this name. He mentions Admiral Byrd lots of times. And this other book, 1964, The Hollow Earth, right? Talks about Admiral Byrd and gives all of these theories and all these explanations and all this stuff. It's also the same guy that wrote the foreword to the secret diary. Maybe it's a coincidence. And he's been a big proponent of Hollow Earth and wrote lots of books after that, touting the line of Hollow Earth. So maybe somehow those two things may be tied in. As for the UFOs, I have no comment because I can neither prove nor disprove because I can only give an opinion, and the opinion is there's a lot out there that I don't know. And I think the UFOs sit inside of that little area of things that I don't know. And I wouldn't say little like I know everything. I just mean
fair enough. I think that's facts.
It did cover a lot of stuff, and I feel a pretty decent amount of time.
Sure.
We did go in depth to some things, but not everything, right? Just you guys, if you come across some stuff that you may have taken umbrage with, leave a comment and let us know. If you guys have your own theories, let us know. I think that it's more important to ask questions and not necessarily always have an answer to everything. There's some things you can remove by, process of elimination. Just kind of.
On that note,
you ready to call this one, Mogley?
Yeah, we'll call this one. So on that note, my name is Mog. This is Texas, and we're signing off with our second event, Operation Highjump. I hope you enjoy.
Is that very definitely planned, or is that...
That is being planned right now. So I'm willing to say to you that there will be a number of expeditions that will follow, I think, year after year, to the bottom of the world, because the government has really become interested.
Well, Admiral Byrd, I can understand. I think everybody can, the interest in the North Pole, because it's so near our greatest challenger, Soviet Russia. But why this interest in the bottom of the world? Nobody living down there, is there?
No, it's pretty cold. There's only one permanent resident, that's the emperor penguin. The little ones live further north. I tell you one reason they're interested. It's by far the most valuable, important place left in the world for science. That's why the scientific groups all over the nation are really interested. But more important than that, it has to do with the future of the nation, those to come after us, or even during your lifetime, because it happens to be an untouched reservoir of natural resources. And as the world shrinks with an ever-increasing acceleration, far-flung places once useless, like we thought the North Pole was, and no man's land, become very useful. The bottom of the world will be important, not only to us, but to our allies.
I was going to ask you, does it have military importance?
It has some, and as the world shrinks, it will continue to shrink with an ever-increasing acceleration, thus bringing these places closer. And in the future, I can see a time when it will be very, very important strategically.
Well, has the development of air power increased the strategic importance of places like the
very much
Parma
so.
Peninsula, was that?
Very much so. Even now, if anything happened and we lost the Panama Canal, we would have to control the islands just north of Antarctica, which are part of Antarctica, then between there and Cape Horn.
I've heard it said that there are 7 continents in the world, and one of them has never been seen by a woman, and that's Antarctica. Is that actually true?
Well, if the Parma Peninsula is an island, as far as I know, that's true. No woman's ever stepped foot upon the Antarctic continent, and it's the most peaceful place in the world.
Well, I'm sure that won't last very long.
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gonna feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing.